This is Main Street with Gary Allen. Now, here's Gary.
And good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Main Street. Gary Allen with you. I hope everybody's had a wonderful time since the last time we were together. I hope all is well with you and your family, and I hope everything is going well in your life in general. We've got a great show for you today. We got my good friend Camille Terry going to be joining us in just a couple of minutes. But first, I just want to thank everybody out there for taking the time to join us. By the way, real soon, I'm going to be able to tell you how to get on Spotify and listen to not only this show, but other shows, some of my past shows from years past. And I think you're going to really, really enjoy it. And it's really a whole lot of fun. You got to excuse me. I'm trying to do something. My cat keeps coming through here, and she discombobulates a lot of different things as we're moving along. I want to also thank the Japanese Garden of South Florida for their continued support, as well, along with the Elks Club of Elks Lodges of South Florida for their continued support. Like I said, I'm going to be able to tell you where to go. We'll put it on the screen once we have it, where you can go into Spotify and listen to not only this show in about another week, but other past shows and even past shows from years back, like with my friends Bruce Flanch and Ray Abruzzo and the guys from Happy Days, Ron Most, as well as Anson Williams. And that's an interesting story all within itself. But today, I have a young lady on who has been a friend of mine for, oh my God, at least 15, almost 20 years. We first met when we were both performing in Las Vegas at a show. She is one of the most beautiful people I've ever known in my life, inside and out. She is one of those people that the minute you meet her, you're instantly a friend, And she's sweet, she's nice, she's talented. She began her career at the age of 2.5. We're going to get into that, but it really took off at the age of 8. Camille Terry is a tribute artist with over 25 plus years in the business. She does and impersonates everybody from Marilyn Monroe, Mae West, Madonna, Annie Lennox, and more, including Queen Elizabeth. It's a remarkable picture. She's been interviewed by Geraldo Rivera, the late Joan Rivers, as well as on Entertainment Tonight. And she was also on a off-Broadway stage production of The Ghost of Marilyn. Well, shall we not? And she's also achieved many and received many awards in the tribute artist profession. And she has been considered one of the best Marilyn Monroes and best acts there is in the business in general. Would you please welcome one of the most delightful, most intelligent, most talented young women I know today, anywhere, anytime, and beautiful inside and out, Miss Camille Terry.
Wow. Thank you so much, Gary, for that big, fantastic introduction. My goodness. I'm going to try to be humble here because right now my head's exploding from all of those compliments. Thank you.
Well, you and I have known each other since we met in Las Vegas. I'm trying to remember, what was the showroom? It was a show put together for lookalikes to get booked and stuff like that when I was doing my Jay Leno thing. But where was it? I can't remember the hotel.
It was at the Imperial Palace just before it got torn down, months before it got torn down. And I guess they just did that because for nostalgic reasons, that's where Legends in Concert started and was still there. And they said, well, hey, let's have our last big hurrah here at the same stage as Legends in Concert. And they had the real awards the first night. And then after that, they had the other showcases for the impersonators. And I believe that's where we met.
Yes, we did. And you and I talked off to the side. And I think I can safely say this as a friend to a friend, because I think you were married at the time. No. Okay. Well,
no, I was just casually dating.
Yeah. And she wouldn't date me, which means she had better common sense than to date me anyway. When you look at this face, who wants to date it? Anyway, but the bottom line is I instantly fell in love. And I don't mean love like I want to rush off to one of the chapels in Vegas and get married, but there was something about the chemistry between you and I that was just so, so good, so wonderful. And you were calming, because that was my first convention doing that. And I was nervous as a bug in a rug.
Ah, you didn't
And
seem nervous.
well, I mean, I have how many years of acting behind me in Los Angeles
Yeah.
and, and even as a stand-up comic, but that was the first time I was doing anything as other than Gary,
Mm-hmm.
and you put me at ease right away. So did a number of others, but you especially, I would gravitate to as much as I possibly could because I just felt so at ease with you. And of course, the late B. Vogelman, who I loved and adored,
Yeah.
she was so nice to all of us. Her daughter is in the business.
Sherry.
Yeah,
Sherry. Yeah.
yeah. I don't know how the business is going. We're going to get into that a little bit later on.
Okay.
You got pushed on stage by your mommy at what, two and a half
Two and
years?
a half years old with my older brother Russ, which you've met before. You know
Yeah.
my brother Russ,
Yes.
and he has his own lookalike agency. Well, he did for a long time, not anymore. He's retired, but she told us go on stage, and he held my hand. She's like, don't let go of your sister's hands, and we were gingerbread children in Hansel and Gretel, and this is a repertory theater in New York City.
Yeah.
And as soon as the witch got pushed into the oven and does this blood curdling scream, "Ah!" I just went, "Ah!" and I ran off stage. And everybody in the audience was cracking up. And my brother was like this. I'm so embarrassed. I can't believe she just did that. He's on stage like this. So I ran into my mother's arms, who was waiting in the wings, and her friend, who was an opera singer with her, said, she is not a ham like you. And my mother said, just give her a few years. I think she will be.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
She sensed it.
And then about 6 years later,
She
at the
put me
age of
back on
8,
age of 8. She put me in an opera production of Madame Butterfly, and she played Madame Butterfly. And there's a role for Madame Butterfly had a son who was half Caucasian, half Japanese, but they couldn't find a boy. So she's like, you want to try showbiz again? And because she saw I was doing well at the dance recital, so she had me on stage, and they made Trouble. That was the name of the child, Trouble. So I played a female Trouble.
I'm not going to comment.
Yeah, well, it's funny because some of the people backstage, I didn't know my character's name was Trouble. They were, are you going to be Trouble tonight? I went, no, I promise I'm not going to run off the stage this time. And like, they're like, no, you're playing Trouble.
Oh. And from that, excuse me, I have a little bit of a sinus cold working here.
It's going around.
And from that, things just started to take off for you in a sense.
Yeah, my mother started putting me in other opera productions, and of course I didn't sing opera, but they always need extras in operas.
Yes.
You don't have to sing. So they didn't have enough children to play like Children in the Village. So I was in La Boheme and Pagliacci. So I got to pantomime, and people say, wow, she really is animated on stage. So from there, in high school, I started getting more into theater.
Yeah.
And I really gravitated towards Shakespeare.
Yes.
That's one of my loves. But I studied it. I went into Shakespeare competitions in high school. And then I did an exchange student program at Cambridge University, my second year of college.
Oh, yes. Cambridge. Hello.
Cambridge, England.
Yes. Yes. Hello.
England.
Yes. Hello. Good morning and top of the morning to you. How did you find young English actors any different than the spoiled little brats that we have in this country?
They take theater a lot more seriously. Although they come across very pretentious and they're a bit snobby towards us Americans. Maybe they have a reason to be.
Yes.
I mean, I was out there, and they were kind of making fun of our music and saying that their artists were better than our artists. And we're like, oh boy, so, but they did welcome us. We had a big costume party one night, and they had the Americans at one big table. They had the English at another table, and then they had the Australians,
Oh
the
God.
the Australians,
The Aussies.
the
Oh.
Aussies at the other one. So all of us were studying Shakespeare there, but the Aussies, I have to say, are big party animals.
Yes, they are. One of my R&Rs when I was in Vietnam was in Sydney, and
Mhm.
I was AWOL. That was my second time being AWOL, and I was making a habit of it. Um, I was having such a good time. I didn't, and the Aussies were really great to me, and but that had to be interesting for the English because Australia was colonized by the criminals from England were sent to Australia. So that had to be interesting. The colonists
Yes.
from the United States, and I still have run across some English that still, oh, you're from the colonies, are you? Yeah. Well, we're a lot bigger than that now, you know. I worked on a cruise ship where the photographers were all English, and so were the dealers.
Hmm.
I don't know if that still holds true to this day. I haven't been on a ship in a good number of years, but but I remember one photographer saying, "Well, if it wasn't for us, you Americans wouldn't have won World War II." And I said, "Well, if it wasn't for us, you people would be goose stepping right about now." You
Yeah.
know, yeah. I mean, they had England on their knees for all intents and purposes.
Right.
You came back from Cambridge and you talked to your mom, and while I loved Mr. Shakespeare, I loved him a great deal. That's the what the well, that's kind of pornographic, I suppose. I mean, it's kind of a little salty as they were, is
That
Shakespeare.
was very risque. Shakespeare was very risque for their time, and now it's very tame. But
Oh yeah.
and my mother was born and raised in London, England.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, she was born. Her parents were American, but they were born there, and they came over by boat during World War II to escape from there,
Yeah.
and which was easy for them because her parents were American. So even though they were born on British soil and they were British, they became Americans too.
Yeah.
And so she loved Shakespeare, but she said, "Honey, there's no money in Shakespeare. Do something else."
Yeah, yeah. Shakespeare is the kind of stuff that actors do when they have the money and they want to go off and be. It's sort of like an avocation. It's fun for them. It stretches their muscles. It allows them to
Mhm.
expand their mind, other than this mindless dribble. I had a I have a real good friend of mine who's on The Young and the Restless to this day, and when he gets time off, he likes to go with the Shakespearean company that's in California, and he does stuff year round. And he said, Gary, it allows me my mind to actually feel like it's being used for something other than mindless dribble on a TV show, which, if
Yes.
you watch the soap operas, it's kind of like whatever.
And
Then,
I
but your
tried
mother,
out for those, and I hated it. And I also tried out for TV commercials.
yeah,
I went to a TV commercial school because I was told that's where the money's at, was television and print. So I
yeah,
went out for a lot
yeah,
of those, and I wasn't getting much. And they said, "Well, you're full figured. You're not skinny like the girls that we have here." And this is
yeah.
what they want right now on TV. They want skinny, and they said you're more built like the girls from the 1950s. And so I thought, okay, I
And
went
thank
back.
God for that.
So I went to Gene Frankel Studios, which was an acting studio in New York. You've heard of Gene Frankel? He was a great Broadway director,
Yes. Yes.
and
Well, I grew up kind of in the business with my uncle. And, I mean, I met Frank, Sammy, and Dean all at one day at the Fountain Blue Hotel. I mean, I grew up in the business. So
wow,
like Joe Franklin, when people say Joe Franklin, I go, yes, I used to watch his show. Yeah.
I was on the show a few times, and so was my
Yeah.
mother. Oh yeah,
Here's
Joe
another one.
Franklin,
Here's another
Mr.
one for the time
Nostalgia.
capsule. Here's another one for the time capsule. Yeah. Yes, Joe. How many of those do you got in your refrigerator?
In fact, it's funny. So when I saw at Gene Frankel Studios, he had me do receptionist work during the day to make some extra money, and he said, "I'll give you some free acting lessons." And I thought, "Wow, that's great," because I needed, actors are hungry
Yeah.
and always penny pinching. So I did the acting lessons, and we would get Showbiz newspaper every Wednesday right on the desk, and right on the front it said Marilyn Monroe lookalikes wanted for a contest. And I was like, wow, I don't look like her, but I know a lot about her, and I think with the right makeup and the wig I can do it.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
So I went ahead and started transforming. I had an NYU student take some test shots of me as Marilyn and uh, study the face and said, okay, I need to calm down the face and everything. And I submitted my pictures, and he says, how would you like to be on the Joe Franklin show? I said, I'd love to. My mother's been on his show a couple times. He says, you come on dressed as Marilyn with two other contestants. He says the three of you were the best ones that submitted your pictures. And these other two women were veterans of being Maryland impersonators. So I was honored to be the newbie, the greenie Maryland, between 5 year Maryland and a 10+ year Maryland. So
I've always hated that term newbie. I don't, I've
but I
never like,
was.
I mean, even when I was starting out in radio in Miami, it was like, oh, Gary's the newbie guy working with Larry King. So, but I always hated that term. I just, but it was your mother, though. Wasn't it your mother that kind of said, honey, you do all these characters, you do all the hats, you put the hats on and the makeup and the wardrobe and everything. Maybe that's a way you should gravitate towards making a living.
My mother and my stepmother, which I don't talk about too often, but she loved theater, and dabbled in it for a while, and she recognized, that was the first thing she saw in me when she first met me. She saw me in a play and said, this kid is meant for the stage. And
Yes.
she said the same thing. We'd watch Saturday Night Live together every Saturday night when I was a teenager, and she'd see me go into my bedroom and put on wigs and try my makeup and mimic people. And she says, you should do something like that. So that's
Yeah.
when I thought Marilyn is the most marketable because there's a
Yeah.
big call for her. And I didn't win the contest, by the way. But
Really?
no, I did not. I didn't even come in close. But actually, I
Wow.
ended up becoming best friends with the girl who won, and she sold me her first costume that she ever made for herself, the famous white 7-year itch, which is so iconic. And she even took it in for me. And I mean that's a real
Yeah.
that's a genuine person. Which you don't find a lot in this
No.
business. You see a lot of backstabbers, I hate to say, and
Yeah.
and so she was
Oh.
very, yeah, she was so genuine, which was so refreshing. And so was her husband, who was a professional makeup artist, and so he showed me how to do the makeup. And they felt badly that day that I didn't come close. They said you should have come in second at least. And so they said, well, tomorrow the same place is having a Jane Mansfield lookalike contest.
Oh, yeah.
Said, let's fix you up as Jane Mansfield. And I thought, who's Jane Mansfield? I'd never heard of her. They're like,
Really?
oh, trust me, you've got the equipment. We'll pump you up a little more. And
Huh.
so I went in the next day as Jane Mansfield, and I won.
You know who her daughter is, right?
Yes, Mariska Hargitay,
Mariska Hargitay, yeah,
which
which she's a sweetheart of an individual. She really is a sweetheart. Uh-oh, we just lost. No, you're back. I just want to remind everybody you're watching Main Street. I'm Gary Allen, your host, along with my guest,
gosh,
tribute artist Camille Terry. No, you're here. You're
I'm
here.
here. Good.
You're here.
Sorry.
Tribute artist Camille Terry, and we're talking about her wonderful, beautiful career. And so I hope everybody's enjoying it. Um, when you started doing this, you also what? You went out to, I think, LA, did you not?
I went out to Los Angeles. Um,
Where did
yeah,
you live
I
out there? Your
I
first play.
lived
I'm
right
just
in
curious.
Hollywood on Whitley. Well, I lived in a few different places. First, I lived in the valley, a little valley girl. Um, and I used to carpool with some people, and I worked for Ron Smith lookalikes, not only just doing gigs, but they said, we need a receptionist. I said, well, I have experience being a receptionist. And they said, cool. They said, if you want to dress up like Marilyn and greet people. And I said, well, I didn't want to give it away, but I do my makeup and hair a bit like her. I bleached my hair and kind of had that persona. But I worked there for a year and I got my feet wet. And in fact, the first week I was out there, I got my first television show as Jane Mansfield, not as Marilyn. It was
Really?
for, do you remember the TV show A Current Affair?
Yes.
And they had to reenact deaths and say,
Uh,
oh, yes, I had to reenact Jane Mansfield's death, which was kind of creepy.
Yes.
So they had me in a car, and they kind of shook it, and then they showed lights, and they're like, okay, now scream like you're gonna crash, and then they cut it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I did that. Was
Yeah.
the first week I was out there. And then the last week I was out there before I decided to move back to New York City because I miss
Yeah.
New York. They said we have hard copy wants you to reenact Marilyn Monroe's death. I said that's what I'm gonna do is start reenacting Blonde Bombshell's death. I'm
Yeah.
like, what happens
Yeah.
if Madonna dies? I'm gonna reenact her death. So
Nah, she's a long way off. No, my first
she's gonna
place,
hang out for a while, I think.
my first place where I lived was up by the Magic Castle.
Oh, Disney?
No, no, no. The Magic Castle, the magician's place up on the hill. I lived right off of La Brea.
Oh, that's right near where I worked. I didn't know that was called
Yeah,
Magician's Castle
the
or the
Magic
Magic
Castle
Castle.
up there where all the magicians that's their big club, and the only way you get in there is if you're invited. And down the street on the left hand side as you go towards the airport is the old Charlie Chaplin studios where my roommate was an engineer. And real quick, I've told this story before, but I love this story very much. I got we didn't have cell phones and everything back then because this was the late 70s, early 80s. And I was working at the Beverly Center as a security guard. And I came in home and there was a note on the phone and it said, Gary, take your shower, blah, blah, blah. Come to the studio. There's something big going on right now. And I think it'll be great for you to meet these different people. So I go in there, I show in, blah, blah, blah. I walk down the hallway. Herb Alpert is there. I said, hey, Herb, how you doing? He said, hey, Gary, what's going on? I said, I don't know, but Art told me to come down there. He said, yeah, they're doing a video of We Are the World. So I
Wow.
was there. I was there for that whole thing that night. Michael Jackson scared the crap out of everybody with his pet snake. He put Cyndi
Oh,
Lauper into a tizzy and a half. But that's where I met Kenny Rogers. That's where I met so many different performers that became friends of mine during my time when I lived in LA and even after, because I ended up working for Kenny for a little while.
oh wow.
Opening for him. Oh yeah, I opened for him for a while, and I got to meet Dolly. I loved Dolly. She was so sweet. She was
I
so
always hear
sweet.
nice things about Dolly.
Oh, she was so
Anything bad
sweet.
about her?
You were talking about, but didn't you have a kind of a bad experience at Ron's place? I know you wrote about it in your little thing that one of the agents made fun of something or another, and
Well, it was a comment that the office manager made, and he said, I just want you to know this is the fringe of showbiz. This isn't real showbiz. And people in LA kind of sneer their noses down at lookalikes and impersonators. And I thought, well, I was disappointed when I heard that, but then when I got to know the business more, I said that's not true. I
no, it's
said
not.
so many of us have gotten into AFTRA and SAG um, because of this business, Actors Equity.
Yeah.
So it's a stepping stone to get into something else. And how many big stars have impersonated famous people and won Academy Awards?
Yeah. Meryl
So
Streep makes a living of it.
yeah, right.
Meryl
Exactly.
makes a living of it,
Yeah.
regardless what somebody may or may not think. You not only do Tommy, can you put up those couple of pictures for us and leave them as we talk about the different characters that this young lady does, please? This is when I first met you. This is you were doing, and I love you as Jessica Rabbit. When you're preparing to do Jessica Rabbit or Marilyn or Madonna, and you're just getting going like you were with Marilyn, what goes into it? The research, not only the look and everything, but you have to do some research on
Oh yeah.
who this person and individual is so you answer questions correctly?
I yes, you should always stay in character at your events and have to reply. It's improvisation. You have to reply as if you were that character and answer questions. So you use your imagination. But Jessica Rabbit, I mean, being just
Was a
what
cartoon character,
it's a
yes.
cartoon, one-dimensional character. So I mean, really, you can have more fun with it in some ways. Um, she's like, I'm not bad. I'm just drawn that way.
And I have a feeling, I could be wrong, Camille, but I have a
Hmm.
feeling a lot of Mae West was put into Jessica Rabbit.
Probably. Oh, come from Simba sometime, big boy.
You know, for
Love
years
her.
people thought there, and then of course you do Annie Lennox.
I
That
think I
has
can naturally look like her more than anyone. I think I've got her features more than anyone. So I've
really.
been told. That's what I've been told. Like, especially when I was thinner, I was told that my features were
What
like.
do you do for the hair? Because you've always had long hair that I've ever known you. You put a wig on, I guess.
Yes, I do now. I used to have short blonde hair, and then I started slicking it back and spraying it orange, or I'd slick it back and spray it platinum blonde. But then I started wearing a wig, a crew cut wig, and they're lace wigs, so I glue them. Ugh, that
Yeah.
glue, it's does a number on your skin. So I mean, there's some sacrifices you make in this business where if you really want to be committed to the character and look like the character, those
Yeah.
are things you have to do.
Yeah. Talk a little. Oh, leave this one up for a couple of minutes, Tommy, or for a little bit. This is Queen Elizabeth II. That is, when I saw that, I went, oh no, I think Camille put a wrong picture in there. But then I looked at it and I went, no, that's Camille. That is a remarkable picture of the Queen Mother, say back, what, 20 years ago, 25 years ago, right?
Probably, yes, more like the Helen Mirren version.
Yes.
It's funny when I look at that, I see my grandmother, I see my mother's mother, I see a little bit of my mother too, because my mother played Queen Elizabeth, and that's her costume. And when she retired from it, I said, "Well, I'm going to do it." And she's
Yeah.
like, "You?" She says, "You're too young." She says, "You'll have to do the younger version." I said, "No." And Leon's like, "I'm going to show her." Leon's my late husband. He was a
Yeah.
wonderful makeup artist, and he showed me how to do old people makeup. Um,
Mm-hmm.
because Leon was also a chameleon. He did Albert Einstein for West Palm Beach.
Oh,
And yeah, so he had to do prosthetic makeup. That's even harder. I'm not
wow.
wearing any prosthetics, but he did prosthetic makeup and then really put wrinkles in his face and the wig that he
When you
glued.
do Queen Elizabeth II, like anytime, the one thing that people always say when you do an older performer or you do an older someone, people have this tendency to say you move slow. No, you move at a normal pace. Even if you're playing a character that's, well, I'm 71, so if I was playing somebody who was 85, I wouldn't move really slow because there are, you move at a normal pace and you don't hobble and you don't have to, like shuffle along with your feet and stuff like that.
Well,
Is
you
how
you study them. Every elderly person is different anyway.
Yeah.
So I mean, Queen Elizabeth, yes, you watch how she walks
Yeah.
and you watch lots of footage and documentaries on her and her movements and body
Yeah.
language. And the purse was a big thing. The purse, she always
Yes.
had the purse on her elbow.
Yeah.
And then by the time she was bored and ready to go, she would put her purse down on her wrist. And
Yeah.
that way her assistants knew it was time to shuffle her off out of there.
It's too bad you didn't get the corgis down too.
The corgis, yes.
The dogs.
Oh,
The
they're
dogs.
so cute. Yeah.
The
No,
dogs.
never had corgis.
One of the best cartoons that I saw when the Queen Mom passed away was one where she was holding hands with Paddington Bear, and she
Oh, the
was
Queen. Queen
yes,
Elizabeth.
the Queen, when Queen Elizabeth passed away, and she was like here was Paddington Bear, and she was holding hands with him and walking this way, and she said, "Paddington, take me to my husband," and I lost it.
Mhm.
I just lost it because her husband was Greek, like I'm Greek,
Mhm.
and he was really a fine gentleman, and he stuck by her side when he gave up his entire naval career, and they had a love that I don't think can be compared to too many that have existed in this world. I'm sure there are, but that I have that cartoon somewhere in my files because I just found it absolutely incredible. Tommy, I want to show a video, if we could, please, of this lovely young lady when she's doing Marilyn Monroe. It's Camille Terry as Marilyn. I don't know if Tommy needs a couple of seconds to get it going or not, but
A tribute to the films of Marilyn Monroe. Please give a warm welcome to Camille Terry.
I loved it. I loved
Thank
it.
you.
When was that done?
Oh gosh, I don't know, maybe 6 years ago
Really?
in
Who
Orlando.
were
Yeah.
who
Hmm.
were the young ladies in front? Was that done at the convention or
Yes, those are the Vixen dancers.
the
And
Vixen?
the Vixen dancers. I always like to use backup dancers. You know, when I did Nancy Sinatra, uh, I had the other kind of not the Vixen dancers. There's so many different groups that are up there, and so
Yeah,
when I do these conventions, I hire the ones that are local, so I don't have
yeah.
to bring my people because I do have dancers here in West Palm Beach too.
I'd be glad to be a dancer for you
Oh
anytime.
yeah. Oh okay. You'll have to audition though.
No, no, no. I'll do it for nothing. I'll
Yeah,
just.
and you still have to audition.
Oh, well, that leaves
I,
that out.
I've
Do
never
you
seen you
know?
dance, Gary. I don't know.
No, I'm afraid my
What kind of dancing do you do?
um, that's for another show. Anyway, when I was living in Hollywood, Florida, and I was doing stuff with the Hollywood Boulevard Theater while I was down there taking care of my mom and dad, I
Mm-hmm.
used to go to an Italian restaurant on the Circle in Hollywood, and I can't remember the name of the Italian restaurant. It's still there. And every night, having dinner was Joe DiMaggio. Every night.
Wow.
And he didn't want to be disturbed, but you would wave at him and he'd wave back. Sometimes he'd come over, sit down, have a glass of wine with you. We never talked about Maryland. We talked always about baseball or whatever the case may be. And then one night he he said to me, he said, I know both of you are in show business and you've not asked me ever anything about Maryland, but tonight I'll let you ask me anything you want me to ask. And I said, how much did you love her? He said, I would have given the world to save her, but nobody could have saved her. Nobody.
Yeah.
She was going down that path. And then the worst thing to me that could be is the idiot that's buried next to her in the mausoleum, which is right across the street from where I did a couple of plays when I
Mm-hmm.
was living in LA. And that's Hugh Hefner. I mean, that man was, as we're finding out, was a real sick puppy. When you and I were doing the conventions,
Mm-hmm.
and I know that a lot of acts, including my good friend and your good friend Richard Hampton, along with Peter God, I always forget his last name because he does George Burns. But there are a lot of acts that do the research. They
Yes.
find out about the acts. They find out about everything about them, as you discussed a few minutes ago. So you can answer questions when you're at a convention or whether you're at a private affair or whatever the case may be. But I also found in these conventions and these people who didn't know who in the name of God they were doing, just that they looked like so and so. And I can bring up one particular act. She was very funny on stage, but she knew nothing about Whoopi Goldberg. Nothing,
Uh-huh.
zero.
Uh-huh.
I asked her about because Whoopi at the time was having um, a, a big fadoo with two DJs in New York City, and I said, so I was interviewing her, because what you call it, Thompson had me MC a couple of things in line.
Mm-hmm.
I was interviewing different people, and Opie and Annie or whatever name they were in New York, and I said, so how's that the feud coming along? She looked at me. She had not a clue.
Mm.
Not a clue. How important is it for you as the performer to learn about Annie Lennox, Madonna, Marilyn, the Queen, obviously, and some of the people that you do are not necessarily an open book either. I mean, I don't know a great deal about Annie Lennox at all. I I don't know if she's still performing somewhere or not. I'm sure she is, but how
Mm-hmm.
important do you believe that that is for an actor? Period. If you're going to be an actor, whether it's doing an impersonation of somebody or a tribute, you need to know.
Absolutely, you need to know. It's easy. Maryland was an open book. Jay Mansfield, you had to do more research because it's not somebody you heard about every day. But when somebody is popular, like Whoopi Goldberg, mainstream, or like the character that I do, which is Madonna or Annie Lennox. Madonna is very popular. She used to be a lot more popular. You have to constantly keep up with what they are into, what they're up, if they have a concert coming up, if there was a scandal recently, anything that's current, you need to keep up with their current affairs. It's a
Yeah.
lot easier to do a dead person because their life ends at a certain time. There's no more, unless there's some scandal that came out about their death,
Yeah.
then you can, talk about that as if. Here's the weird thing: when you do a meet and greet as a dead person, you have to act like you're still alive, almost like their spirit is still alive, or they never died, or I'd make a joke. They say, Marilyn. They said, you look so good for a dead woman who's like in her 90s. I said, oh honey, I never died. I've been hiding out at the Kennedy compound in Palm Beach all these years.
By the
And
way, ladies and gentlemen, down here at the bottom of the screen is comicchameleon.com. That's how you can get a hold of her. We also have a phone number that will be put up there. At the Kennedy compound. I don't think they have that compound anymore.
No, they don't. They don't. But I'm near Palm Beach, so that goes over pretty well. I say, oh, they had me frozen all these years, and they just thaw me out for the occasion, and then they put me back in my box.
Ha!
So
Yeah,
you
well,
just have to be creative when you're playing a dead person.
I think whether you're doing a tribute artist or whether you're an actor, and God only knows there's so many actors out there. I mean, there's hundreds of thousands of them that go to LA every day. I remember uh, uh, a friend of mine who used to be on General Hospital forever and a day, and I'm not Tony Gary, who used to play Luke. Tony and I were really
Oh,
good friends. Yeah,
wow.
living not far from you, south of you, is Will Shriner. Will Shriner's brother was Ken Shriner, who played Scotty Baldwin on General Hospital forever. And Will and I used to play on the improv softball team. We were all Jewish guys, so we called ourselves the Stars of David. So, it kind of fit in. But no, I was always surrounded by show business people. As a matter of fact, growing up in Fort Lauderdale, one of the most famous men that was ever on Cheers, as well as his own show, Frasier, was a surfer with my brother almost every afternoon off of the Fort Lauderdale beach. And that was the gentleman who played Frasier Crane.
Kelsey Grammer?
Kelsey Grammer.
I didn't know he was from Florida.
Yeah, he's from Fort Lauderdale. He was a very easygoing, laid-back kind of a guy till he witnessed his sister being committing suicide, and
Yeah.
that's when he got sent to New York, and everything changed after that. Can we get that phone number up there, Tommy, for Camille, please? Because I want people to be able to call her and book her and get her going again. I believe I put that in there somewhere. When you go to these conventions, what's it like now? I haven't been to a convention. 561-602-0655. Leave a message there. She also does Chameleon Christmas, which is fabulous. She plays Mrs. Claus, and
A young Mrs. Claus or middle-aged Mrs. Claus.
middle-aged Mrs.
Glamorous.
Claus. I've played Santa Claus a few times for my mom when she did some charity stuff.
Uh-huh.
What's it like at these conventions now? I mean, when you and I were doing it, or when I was doing it, people took it serious. I mean,
Yeah.
they wanted to get booked. They wanted to make sure that the costume was just right and the songs were just right and everything fit in and everything was wonderful. And they wanted to impress. Is it that way anymore, or is it a
It
little less?
faded a little bit, especially during COVID, and we didn't get a lot of people coming back. And there's always going to be these, I don't even want to call them newbies. They're just amateurs that would somehow get into the convention and they're wearing a Party City costume instead of an actual costume, which
Wow.
I am so against. And so because a lot of us have spoken up to the producers, they've told them, you need to step up your game if you want to be here. So they audition them now, or they see not only a photograph, but they see a video. They said, send me a video, even if it's a homemade video, just
Right.
something, in your living room. Please don't do it in front of a door, because a lot of people like to take pictures and videos in front of doors. For some reason, they think a door is a great backdrop. So I remember one Marilyn doing a video in front of a shower curtain. I mean, it would have been okay, but you can see kind of like the towel rack over here and the toilet seat. So you gotta I always recommend I like to take young people that are breaking into the business and take them under my wing that I think have potential and mentor them. I've mentored a
Yeah.
lot of people, and I tell them you need to go to either Sarah LaSalle of LaSalle Design Costumes, and or you find your own costumer that's going to make it. I said, try to be as accurate as you possibly can with your wigs, your costumes, your makeup, your mannerisms, the voice. I said,
Yeah.
it's not enough just to look. There's some people I remember. Who was it? Remember, there's a lady that looked just like Sarah Palin, and then she
Oh
opened her
God.
mouth and the thick Hungarian accent came.
Yeah. Yeah. There was
And
another one
she's
too from Texas that looked like Sarah, but she didn't do the homework. She didn't do the
no,
homework,
if
you
you don't
know?
do the homework, what are you? Oh, well, we could do print work. Well, you still for print work, you still have to do the mannerisms. You still have to look right.
You know, I
Um,
was very lucky. I was very lucky. I knew Jay from the age of 9 years old. And when I started doing Jay Leno, I went to him at the Mirage and I said, look, Marcel has been doing this. He's been on your show. Do you mind for me to pick up a couple extra bucks while I'm here in Vegas? I have no idea if it's going to be a success. He said, Gary, go ahead. Be my guest, And although he doesn't talk like that, and he's actually more down here, but everybody wants to hear him up here, when he talks up here and he talks like that. But I've known Jay for years. Now, Jay has quit performing altogether.
no, I didn't know that.
Well, he's taking care of Mavis, who has the final stages of Alzheimer's.
Oh,
And
I'm sorry. That's terrible.
and I was talking to Chris DePetta, who owns the Punchline, and Glenn Hirsch. And I was also talking to, who was it? Oh, John Stamos, who's also friends with Jay. And I said to John, what's it going to be when Mavis goes? He said he will be devastated because that's the last member of his family here. They're all gone. His brother's gone. His mom and dad are gone. Same as me. I only have a few, I have Camille Terry, and that's about all I have left now.
I don't have
That,
any family in Florida either.
I mean, I do. I have a brother down in South Florida, but whatever.
Yeah, I have
Camille,
cats. That's my family.
I have Putty Tat too. She's around here somewhere. She interferes with everything.
I have my male
we're-
cat right behind me right now. He's purring. He's sitting right behind me.
well, if I was behind you, I'd be purring too, but that's a story for another day. We're talking to Camille Terry, Gary Allen with you here on Main Street, as we are all the time. Next week, we've got a sports show coming on. My good friend from ESPN, Dave Lamont, is going to be joining us along with some of the insiders from the University of Miami. So I'm looking forward to it, being a former student. Camille, the pandemic, show business, the loss of your husband, and life in general has taken you, as it takes all of us, through ups and downs, ins and outs. I'm going through kind of that right now, as you know, having been what I've been through in the last couple of weeks to a month. How has your faith got you through it? And how has it helped sustain you in those dark times when you thought the whole world was caving in?
Oh,
I never ask bad questions.
No, no, you don't. Pretty deep. I've always been religious. I was raised in the Latter-day Saint Church, in a Latter-day Saint family, which we are Christians. And even when
Yes.
I was inactive in the church, I still had my faith and I never stopped praying. And because, when we went through the pandemic, I didn't lose faith. I prayed. It was hard for everybody. But I asked for guidance, and the Lord gave me guidance. You know what he told me to do? He said, do a Facebook Live show. Do whatever, keep your creative juices flowing, because I gave you talent and you need to utilize that talent. The Lord gives us gifts,
Yeah.
and if we don't use them, we lose them. So use your gifts that the Lord gives you. Pray every day. Never lose faith. And sorrow gives you strength. That's why we go through trials and tribulations. So yes, and we didn't have church, but we did online church. You read your scriptures, you do what you have to do to stay strong.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, 2 years ago, Leon had gotten COVID for the second time, and it did a number on his organs, and it affected his heart, and he had a heart attack as a result of the complications of COVID, which I know so many people that have died from COVID, and people.
I lost a brother. I lost a brother due to it. Yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
Well, he also suffered from CTE. He was a NFL football player for 14 years. So, you know, it was a combination of this, that, and the other.
If you have a pre-existing condition and then you have COVID combined with it, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's really a shame. You know, a lot of people in the tribute artist industry passed away of that or complications of COVID.
Yeah.
And if I didn't have my faith in God, I think I would have gone crazy. You know,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
really kept me a strong woman. I do know that I had a Marilyn Monroe gig 5 days after Leon passed away, and
I
another
remember you telling me that. Yeah.
a week. I had booked Leon and I as Elvis and Marilyn for a returning client up in Central Florida. And a week later, and I thought, what do I do? Do I tell them? And I thought I didn't even bother to tell him that he passed away. You know, I hate to say this, but if they're good looking Elvis, they don't know the difference. And I asked a very good friend of mine, Steve Greer, who is a lovely human being. He's a British Elvis. But when he does Elvis, the British accent goes away and he sings like Elvis. And
Yeah.
he had the same costumes. He says, whatever you want. And he says, why don't you drive up the night before? You stay here with my wife and I. And he gave me a guest room. And the next morning we got up and did the gig together. And nobody knew the difference. And he had me laughing the whole 2 hours at the gig while we were performing. So I
Great.
didn't even once cry that day.
Good. That's
The show
wonderful.
must go on.
Yeah. That's how my faith is. It's right now I'm going through a rough time, and you just kind of take it one step at a time, and God will be there, and He'll make sure that whatever has to be done, and it'll be done in His time, maybe not necessarily your time, but it'll be done in His time. I want to talk about one thing. We've got about 5 or 6 minutes left, and I just want to hit on something that I thought is the funniest story you've told me in a long time. You were in a movie. Let's see if I get the title correctly. What was the title of that movie you
Tu
did?
Wan Fu, thanks for everything, Julie Newmar.
Yes, there you go. And talk about the impersonators, the actual female drag queens that were in a room
Yes. Anyone who's
staring at
seen
you.
it. Yes. So I was found. They first of all, Sylvia Faye Casting scouted out in the tri-state area. Every drag queen they could find in the tri-state area. They went to every drag show, and I was performing in one because they couldn't get a guy to do Marilyn because, you know, some of them were just too big, broad shoulders. But they said, "Hey, you want to be in a movie?" And I said, "Sure, I'd love to. Should I go as Marilyn?" And they went, "No, just go in full drag." And I said, "Okay, drag." And I'm like, you know, drag queen. I said, "You realize I'm a real woman?" She goes, "You are?" She took off her glasses. "You are?" I'm like, that's Sylvia Faye, the actual Sylvia Faye herself. So I said, yeah, and it was dark in the club. You know, it was after the show, we'd go out and greet everybody in the audience. So, and she's like, you know what? There's going to be 300 drag queens in there. They're not going to know if there's a real woman mixed up in there. So there were actually about a dozen real women mixed in there with all the other drag queens. And I knew how to do drag makeup. I even helped the other girls do like big wigs and everything. I had a Nancy Sinatra wig. But as I'm there and I had my Nancy Sinatra wig and, you know, I had my cleavage pumped up in this red mini dress and platform heels that they wear. And these drag queens are all like whispering and looking at me and whispering, looking at me. And they said, honey, we just have to ask you, are you a transgender? And I really wanted to mess with them and say, as of last week, I've had the complete operation. Yes. But I said, no, I'm a real woman. I'm naturally born real woman. Oh, they said, oh, thank God. Because we were just hating on you.
Hating on you.
They were hating on you. They were jealous, in other words.
Because you look so good.
Well, if I were a man dressed as a woman, they'd really be jealous. But they said, okay, we're relieved. You're a real woman. Okay.
Right.
So yeah,
We've got a couple of minutes. We've got a couple of minutes left.
But speaking of Julie Newmar, little did I know that one day I would impersonate Julie Newmar.
Yeah.
And because here I am with Manny Casso as the Riddler. There I am as in my Catwoman costume. Perfect. And so Leon
Julie was a little strange from what I'm told from people that knew her.
I met her. She was very nice, and I got friendly with her manager too.
Really?
Yeah, he
Yeah.
took me out to dinner afterwards. And I'll say
What?
no more. No, he was very nice. But he told me nice stories about her. I know she. You know what, Julie? I've always been a big fan of Julie Newmar, and
Yeah.
because of that, I met Leon. He saw pictures of
Yeah.
me as Julie Newmar and fell in love, and we started
Hey,
talking.
I've been in
But
love with you since the minute I met you. You know that. My heart has always gone that way. One
aw,
final question before we skedaddle out of here. With everything you've learned in your life, professionally, personally, looking back at that little girl, Camille Terry, what advice would you give that young lady today when she was 8 years old? What you've learned now, all these years later?
never lose faith in God, because I
Yeah,
did for a while. I strayed big time.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, but you know what? Sometimes we have to go through these things to learn lessons, learn life lessons, and grow from them. Hopefully, we learn from our mistakes.
yeah. You can't learn anything from victory. You learn more from mistakes because you have the tendency to look back and go, okay, what did I do wrong? Was it really my big mouth, or did I say this wrong, or did I, yeah. Through your losses and defeats, you learn. Victories, you just go on thinking everything's great.
Right. I mean, look at all the successful people that had learned from their failures more than their successes. All
Oh yeah.
these very big. Look at Hershey. Hershey failed so many times before he finally made the ultimate candy bar and
Thank you,
chocolate.
Mr. Hershey. Thank you, Mr.
Thank
Hershey.
you.
I love your candy bar. I really do. As your former president, I appreciate that very, very much. I always wanted to do that, but there were so many people in the business doing it, and I think even Clinton has said to me, and so did Hillary, that I do the best voice that she's heard since Dale Hammond on Saturday Night Live. That
Uh,
I have
did
it.
you meet Clinton?
Oh yeah, my buddy was his chief advance for years, and had I not gone home to take care of my mom and dad when I did, I would have worked in the White House. My second time in the
Wow.
White House. That would have been my second time in the White House.
My father worked in the White House during the Jimmy Carter years. He
I was there for Nixon.
Wow. I've got, in fact, I'm looking at there's a picture of my father autographed by President Carter in 1977. My father was a lighting designer. He was an artist
Yeah.
too, and did his whole Christmas crest and
Uh,
Christmas. He did all the designs for them that year.
yeah, I worked I was in the Air Force at the time, but I was assigned to the 89th Airlift Wing because they found out who my brother was with the Baltimore Colts. Nothing that I did, because when they interviewed me for the job, they said, "Oh, Lieutenant, you have an exemplary record as a pilot in the Air Force." I said, "You sure you're talking to the right guy?" I said, "I was AWOL twice in Vietnam. I've philandered around with a lot of the nurses that are in Vietnam. Are you sure you got the right guy?" And well, your brother is so and so with the anyway. I ended up there flying all over with Nixon and Kissinger and all these other people. And my father always said, "What are you going to do for a follow up?" I said, "I'll probably be a loser for the rest of my life." So, so there it goes. Camille, thank you so much. It has been one of those most delightful afternoons. I'm going to talk to you after we get off the air and we get out of here. But more than anything else, I just want to thank you for taking the time and sharing your story with everybody out there. And I love you with all my heart, my love.
Oh,
I hope we can sit down soon and break bread together. That would be such a joy. It really,
that would
really
be a
would.
joy.
It really,
Thank
really
you.
would. Well,
Thank
thank
you,
you.
Gary. It's been a delight. This has been so much fun. I'm sorry it has to end.
Yeah, well, everything eventually does come to an end at some point or another, I suppose. And
Yeah.
I also want to thank everybody out there who's been watching, and thank you so much for joining us here on Main Street. And take care of yourselves, please. And until next time, take care of yourselves and each other.